Philip Wicksteed was born in 1844 and was educated at University College London and Manchester New College, where he studied the classics. Following in his father's footsteps, he joined the Unitarian ministry in 1867. Wicksteed was both a theologian and a scholar of great range and depth. In addition to making seminal contributions to the subject of economics, he was also a noted medievalist who had a deep interest in the works of Dante. As an economist, Wicksteed was heavily influenced by William Stanley Jevons, the British economist who, along with Leon Walras and Karl Menger, initiated the Marginalist Revolution in economics in 1871. But his work, especially his treatise, The Common Sense of Political Economy, that was published in 1910, reveals significant Austrian influences as well. It is interesting to note that Wicksteed was no fan of the free market. He was sympathetic to ideas such as land nationalization and even socialism. Nevertheless, he made many important contributions to the Austrian price theoretic tradition. Like Mises, Wicksteed believed that human action constitutes the starting point of economic analysis. We all live in a world of scarcity. As a result, we are forced to constantly make choices and decisions. The presence of scarcity means that we are, at every moment, confronted by alternatives that we are forced to choose between. We must decide to strive after one alternative and set the other aside. On the market, Wicksteed noted, we are all engaged in making such choices. You may decide to spend $3 on a cup of coffee. In the process, you choose to give up some other good that you could have bought, probably a slice of pizza or a hot dog. Or the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers may decide to hand LeBron James a new multi-million-dollar contract. He gives up the possibility of hiring 2 or 3 other less talented players, or maybe he gives up a yacht that he might have bought and all the cruises that he could have taken on it. Wicksteed made the crucial point that such choices are made every day, not only on the market, but in all spheres of human life. As he noted, and I quote, "The general principles which regulate our conduct in business are identical with those which regulate our deliberations, our selections between alternatives, and our decisions in all other branches of life." And of course, when you think about this, it seems obvious. All of us are constantly deciding what to do with our time. You might be faced with the prospect of having to spend your Saturday night studying in preparation for an exam. As a result, you give up going to a party or watching a movie or whatever else you would have done with that time. Similarly, we are all constantly administering our resources at home. Should I use these eggs to make an omelette or to bake a cake? Should I drink this glass of wine today, or would I prefer it tomorrow? We are all faced with such choices every day. For Wicksteed, this omnipresence of choice and action is reflected in everyday language. So, for example, we often say that doing something is not worth the time or not worth the effort. These common phrases merely reflect the fact that we have to make choices with respect to our time and our effort. Pursuing a certain end is not worth my time or effort, because there is some other end that I prefer that I give up in the process. So Wicksteed, like Mises and Rothbard after him, recognized that every economist is necessarily a praxeologist. The subject of economics is a subfield of the broader field of praxeology that studies human action in all its generality and traces out the logical implications that follow from it. The economist is thus a student of choice in every sphere of life. And based on this general study of human choice, he proceeds to develop theorems and laws that pertain to prices and other market phenomena. Now, the fact that economics is a subfield of praxeology raises the important and interesting question of how to define the scope of economics. Where does praxeology end and economics begin? What separates choices made on the market from those made in non-market settings? For the classical economists, it was the motives of the decision makers that separated choices on markets from those made in the household, in politics, and in church. On the market, it was assumed that individuals strive after selfish and material ends. They are egoistic and purely self-interested, and do not strive after spiritual or idealistic objectives. The subject of economics was essentially the study of decisions made by such an egoistic and materialistic economic man, or homo economicus. Choices made with altruistic, spiritual, or idealistic motives in mind lay outside the realm of economics. Wicksteed was a sharp critic of such a definition of the scope of economics. In this, as in the recognition of the existence of praxeology, he was a forerunner of Mises and of other Austrian economists like Kirzner and Rothbard. He chose to define the scope of economics in a different manner. On the market, he noted, individuals engage in interpersonal exchange. In order to satisfy their own ends, they must strive to serve the needs of others first. The subject of economics focuses on studying choices made in this setting. It is thus essentially a study of exchange relations and the phenomena that result from these relationships that form between individuals. In a non-market setting, on the other hand, individuals do not enter into any exchange relationships with each other. Instead, they strive to satisfy their wants in a self-sufficient manner. Thus, for Wicksteed, the line that divides decisions made in market settings from those made in non-market settings have nothing to do with motives. He argued that the economist must take man as he finds him, and must not imagine that he or she is actuated by a few simple motives. Instead, all the various motives that urge individuals to act, whether egoistic or altruistic, material or spiritual, are all part of the subject matter of economics. In placing man as he is at the center of his economic analysis, Wicksteed also descended from a different version of homo economicus that had emerged after the Marginalist Revolution. Inspired especially by the work of Wilfredo Pareto, economists had begun defining economics as the study of decisions made by individuals blessed with omniscience. A hyper-rational economic man had emerged, who made choices with perfect knowledge and who never erred in his decision-making. Wicksteed disagreed with this approach as well. In doing so, he placed himself squarely in the Mengerian tradition. Like Menger and Austrians in general, Wicksteed warned against restricting economic analysis to choices that are deliberate and error-free. He noted, and I quote, that a great part of our economic conduct is impulsive and a great part unreflecting. And when we reflect, our choice is irrational. He argued that impulsive and erroneous decisions are still choices. They too involve choosing between alternatives. Thus, the concepts of praxeology and economics apply to such decisions as well. Omniscient market participants, since they are blessed with perfect knowledge regarding the underlying conditions, always make the optimal choice in any set of circumstances. The prices that result from their decisions bring about a state of final equilibrium, or what Mises termed a final state of rest. Since market participants in a final state of rest are making optimal decisions, they have no room to improve their well-being by doing something different. Thus, in an economy that stays in such a state of equilibrium for a prolonged period of time, individuals make the same choices repeatedly, day after day, year after year. As Mises argued, individuals in such an evenly rotating economy will not resemble human beings as we know them. There is no human action in such a world. Market participants will instead resemble automatons, repeating the same patterns of actions over and over again. Theorists focusing exclusively on the decisions made by an omniscient economic man thus restrict their analysis to such an economy. One of the hallmarks of the Austrian price theoretic tradition, as Mises noted in his autobiographical notes and recollections, is its focus on developing a theory of action and a theory of price formation in a world of disequilibrium. The focus of Austrian price theorists such as Menger, Bumbawerk, Mises, and Rothbard has always been on explaining the actual prices that emerge in the real world from moment to moment, and not prices that bring about a final state of rest. These actual realized prices result not from the decisions of an omniscient economic man, but from the decisions of human beings as they are, making erroneous decisions in a world of uncertainty. For Austrians, the final state of rest and the evenly rotating economy are imaginary constructs that will never emerge in the real world. Instead, they are mental constructs that help the economist to understand how changes in the underlying conditions affect various economic phenomena. Now, in order to successfully analyze change in this way, we need a theory of the path to the final state of rest. Thus, along with analyzing realized prices, Austrian price theorists are also interested in developing a theory of the market process, that is, a step-by-step theory of how the economy will approach a final state of rest if there are no further changes in the underlying conditions or data. Wicksteed, by rejecting the concept of an omniscient homo economicus, and by focusing on analyzing the choices of man as he is, stands firmly within the Austrian price theoretic tradition. In chapter 6 of his Common Sense, titled On Markets, he makes significant contributions both to the analysis of realized prices and to the theory of the market process. Actual realized prices, Wicksteed noted, are the result of decisions and choices made by individuals. They result from the momentary valuations of market participants that prevail when exchanges are made. Individuals form these valuations after trying to appraise the prevailing conditions that could potentially impact the outcome of their decisions. Given the lack of omniscience, these appraisements are inevitably incorrect, and as a result, the momentary valuations are erroneous. Sellers, for example, might not sell their goods at the highest price possible. Unaware of buyers who are willing to pay more for their goods, they sell them at a price that is lower than necessary. Similarly, buyers, unaware of sellers who are willing to sell at lower prices, may buy goods paying higher prices than necessary. The presence of such erroneous valuations implies that realized prices do not bring about a final state of rest. Wicksteed also noted that the market has an inbuilt mechanism of error correction that pushes the economy towards a final state of rest. Acknowledging the fact that there might be some sellers who appraise the underlying conditions better than others, Wicksteed argued that these superior appraisers earn greater revenues and profits. As a result, over time, their decisions carry greater weight. Assuming no changes in the prevailing conditions, this process of entrepreneurial selection pushes the markets towards the final state of rest and the evenly rotating economy. In emphasizing the presence of this process of entrepreneurial selection, Wicksteed was a forerunner of Mises. Such a process of error correction forms an important part of Mises's price theory as developed in Human Action. In addition to these contributions to methodology and price theory that I have discussed, Wicksteed was also an influential critic of the objective theories of value that were prominent in the early part of the 19th century. He also made many important contributions to the subjective cost tradition. As he repeatedly emphasized, costs of production are not something objective, but merely reflect the opportunity cost of foregone alternatives. Without a doubt, Philip Wicksteed is a very important thinker in the Austrian tradition. I would urge all students of Austrian economics to study his work in detail, especially the Common Sense of Political Economy. You will find that it is well worth your time.
For more content like this, visit Mises.org.